The most terrifying part about the fall of the Roman Empire wasn't the wars, the assassinations, or the barbarian invasions. It was the fact that almost nobody realized the empire was dying until it was already too late. For centuries, Rome ruled the known world. Its armies were unstoppable. Its cities were rich beyond imagination. Roads stretched across continents. Emperors were worshipped like gods. To the average Roman citizen, the empire seemed eternal, and then it vanished. So how does the most powerful civilization on Earth collapse? Was it betrayal, corruption, economic disaster, climate change, disease, or something even darker hiding beneath the surface of history? Because the fall of Rome wasn't one event. It was a slow-motion apocalypse. At its peak, the Roman Empire controlled nearly 2 million square miles of land and over 70 million people. From the deserts of North Africa to the forests of Britain, Rome dominated everything. Its soldiers marched with terrifying discipline. Its engineers built roads and aqueducts so advanced that some still exist today. People believed Rome would last forever. But beneath the golden statues and marble temples, cracks had already begun to spread. The empire had become too massive to control. Emperors rose and fell through violence. Political corruption infected the government like a disease. Generals murdered emperors. Senators plotted against each other. Loyalty disappeared. In one shocking 50-year period known as the crisis of the 3rd century, Rome went through over 20 emperors. Most didn't die peacefully. Some were poisoned, some were stabbed, some were dragged through the streets by angry mobs. One emperor was reportedly killed by his own soldiers after refusing to pay them enough money. Imagine living in a country where rulers changed every few months through bloodshed and betrayal. That was Rome. And while the leaders fought for power, ordinary citizens suffered. Taxes became crushing. Inflation spiraled out of control. Farmers abandoned their land. Trade routes became dangerous. Entire regions fell into chaos. Then came another invisible enemy: disease. Historians believe devastating plagues swept through the empire multiple times, killing millions. One pandemic, known as the Antonine Plague, may have wiped out nearly 10% of Rome's population. Soldiers died. Workers disappeared. Entire towns became ghost cities. And yet, Rome still survived. For a while. Because Rome's greatest strength was always its military. But eventually, even the legendary Roman army began to rot from within. Recruitment declined. Roman citizens no longer wanted to fight. So the empire increasingly relied on foreign mercenaries, warriors from Germanic tribes once considered enemies of Rome. Think about that for a second. The empire trusted outsiders to defend its borders because its own people had stopped believing in the empire itself. And then came the man who would change history forever, Attila the Hun. When people heard his name, entire cities panicked. He led a brutal nomadic army that swept across Europe like a nightmare. The Huns burned villages, massacred civilians, and forced thousands to flee toward Roman territory. This created a massive refugee crisis along Rome's borders. Germanic tribes begged Rome for protection from the Huns. Rome reluctantly allowed some tribes to enter the empire. It was one of the biggest mistakes in Roman history. The newcomers were treated horribly. Roman officials starved them, exploited them, and sold them rotten food at insane prices. Some desperate families reportedly sold their children into slavery just to survive. Eventually, the tribes snapped. In 378 AD, at the Battle of Adrianople, Gothic forces crushed the Roman army in one of the empire's worst military disasters. The Roman Emperor Valens himself was killed on the battlefield. Some say his body was never even found. That battle changed everything. For the first time in centuries, Rome looked vulnerable. Enemies sensed weakness. And weakness attracts predators. Over the next decades, barbarian groups crossed into Roman lands again and again. Vandals, Visigoths, Ostrogoths, Franks, Suebi. Tribes once kept outside by Roman power were now pouring into the empire. Then came the moment that shocked the ancient world. In 410 AD, the city of Rome itself was sacked by the Visigoths. For nearly 800 years, Rome had stood unconquered. Now, enemy soldiers marched through its streets. People were slaughtered, buildings burned, wealth was looted. Survivors hid inside churches praying for mercy. To us today, it may sound like just another historical event, but to Romans, this was the end of the world. Saint Jerome, one of the most famous scholars of the time, reportedly wrote, "The city which had taken the whole world was itself taken." Imagine hearing that the greatest superpower on earth had suddenly fallen. That was the psychological impact. But strangely, the empire still didn't fully collapse. Not yet. Rome kept limping forward like a wounded giant refusing to die. And this is where the story becomes even darker. Because some historians believe Rome didn't fall only because of invasions. They believe Rome destroyed itself. The wealthy elite became obsessed with luxury while ordinary citizens suffered. Political leaders cared more about personal power than national stability. Corruption infected every level of society. Even the Roman currency became almost worthless because emperors kept reducing the silver content in coins to create more money. Sound familiar? Meanwhile, the empire split into two halves, the Western Roman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire. The East became richer and stronger. The West became weaker and poorer. Eventually, the eastern half evolved into what we now call the Byzantine Empire and survived for another 1,000 years. But the Western Empire was doomed. Then came the final blow. In 476 AD, a Germanic warrior named Odoacer overthrew the last Western Roman emperor, a teenage boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus. The final emperor of Rome was not a legendary warrior, not a feared conqueror, just a frightened young ruler abandoned by a dying empire. Odoacer removed him from power without some massive final battle. No dramatic apocalypse, no giant explosion. That's one of the strangest parts of Rome's fall. The greatest empire in Western history didn't end with one final heroic stand. It simply faded away. And most people living through it probably didn't even realize they were witnessing the end of an era. But here's where the mystery deepens. Did Rome truly fall? Or did it transform into something else? Because many things created by Rome still shape our lives today. Governments, laws, architecture, military systems, languages, roads, politics, even the calendar. In some ways, Rome never disappeared. And there's another chilling theory historians debate even now. Could modern civilizations collapse the same way? Not through one giant disaster, but through division, corruption, economic instability, political chaos, declining trust, and leaders fighting each other while the foundations quietly crumble underneath. That's what makes the fall of Rome so haunting. It doesn't feel ancient, it feels familiar. Maybe that's why people remain obsessed with this story nearly 2,000 years later. Because Rome forces humanity to confront a terrifying truth. No empire lasts forever, not even the greatest one on Earth. And somewhere in the future, historians may one day study our civilization the same way we study Rome today, wondering how something so powerful could possibly collapse. The question is, will we recognize the warning signs before it happens? I hope you like this video. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to our channel.